Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we are back. We just did a fantastic Also Curious show. We talked about so many movies, but now we're going to talk about what you guys are here to see, and that, of course, is Superman. They're filming. They're out there, back at it again in Cleveland. We originally thought they might be in Cincinnati today, but then it seemed like plans maybe changed either late last week or over the weekend. And you know what? We do have some evidence of this out there that indicated that things obviously aren't quite maybe going according to plan, and in more ways than one, as we found out from today's shoot. So, John,
Mhm.
without any further delay, I wanted to ask you. You've seen some of the pictures floating around. What are your
Yep.
thoughts on everything that's going on?
I think, yeah, it just looks like an interesting shoot, but it does confirm what we were kind of like researching the other day, where it was like, oh, they were doing a extras, rush call or
Like they did a
whatever,
rush
casting
call
call.
for because
Um,
like if you
yeah,
remember, there was a casting call for police officers in Cincinnati last week, right? Like I think was it this
yeah,
sign up sheet that we had,
yeah,
or like this one here. They needed police officers in Cincinnati on the 8th. They're clearly not in Cincinnati because we were thinking they were gonna because they had permits all written out for the Hall of Justice. Uh, Essentially, what would serve as the Hall of Justice, the inspiration for it, that is the Union Terminal in Cincinnati. But it seems like that's not what was going on today. So, like, what do you think changed? What happened? Like, I mean,
I
do
mean,
we have
that's
any?
just productions change all the
Yeah,
time. Sometimes an actor, um, you know, can't do something this day, can't do this day, or like maybe the light is better, maybe everything is just too perfect, maybe the extra, maybe this person's work. It's just like there's a million things that can go wrong on a set. Murphy's law
yeah,
does love them some productions, because film productions, everything can go wrong and everything usually does go wrong.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's I'm not saying like anything bad. It's just like, because like something going wrong doesn't necessarily mean,
yeah.
oh my god, disastrous. It's just
No,
like,
yeah.
okay,
It's
we just need to fix this, do this, do that,
yeah.
do that. Okay, Cleveland for one more day. Okay, gotcha. Perfect. So yeah, we're getting this
Yeah.
scene, and it looks like, as I mentioned on the Oh So Curious show very briefly, it seems as though my theory was they're doing some establishing shots, but at the same time they might be doing like a big action sequence with a lot of people running.
Because I mean, Angelina
Um,
hinted earlier that this looks like some kind of evacuation
yeah,
because you got
that's
police
yeah,
officers, the police officers who are either I mean, those are the extras they were casting with that casting call. Plus also the cars that they brought in, which you remember, I think we talked about, they didn't want any red or white cars. Those are all elements here, but you can see everybody's dragging something along with them. It almost
yeah.
feels like a scene out of Independence Day before when the aliens show up. Like, manner of speaking, to me, it kind of feels a little bit like that. Um, well, what do you think they're running from though? Like, why do you think
Yeah.
there's an evacuation
Maybe
going on in
maybe
Metropolis?
something like really major. Maybe this might be third act. Maybe this might be, we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, we need to evacuate Metropolis. Something is going on. We need to evacuate. And so we're getting that. And so, and but the thing is, maybe the evacuation doesn't vision can't talk. The evacuation doesn't work because maybe
Doesn't
the
go according to
person,
plan.
the villain, whatever, is following the evacuation. He's like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill all these fucking
Yeah,
people, whoever the villain is or really is. Like, maybe it's Lex Luthor, maybe it's Bizarro, maybe it's the Ultraman thing we're doing. I don't know, but it's curious. But the thing is, I like how we're like, okay, this is probably what it is, but it's still we don't get that entire thing, we don't get that entire bit. So it's like, yeah, we could theorize. There's a lot of obvious things, but there's still a lot of questions, and I think that's what James Gunn loves teasing his audience. So that's very
yeah, and
exciting in a way.
now this is the bridge on screen is the Detroit Superior Bridge. You could see they've got a lot of cars and obviously a lot of people out there. It looks kind of Art Deco. It looks a little more classic. Maybe not necessarily Art Deco, but it looks more classic, like a little more timeless. It doesn't look like the kind of futuristic bridge that you saw in the last iteration of Metropolis that we got in the DCEU, where everything seemed very much 2024, 2025. Here, you're seeing something that feels a little more timeless, a little less perfect, a little more in the American heartland, because that's of course where they are. They're in Cleveland. You see a big flag hanging there from some kind of like lift there,
Hmm.
which could be just for lighting purposes, or it could be hinting at something that is to simulate maybe a big object falling from the sky. Clearly,
You
people
know
are
what it
looking up
could
at
be?
the sky.
You know what it could be? It
Yeah.
could be that remember in the not the set photo, the official photo of
Hmm.
Superman when the suit got released. It could be
Yeah.
that thing in the background, which some theorized was a Sun Eater from the All-Star Superman comic book.
Right.
And they're like adapting that like big, and that's might be what it is. Like this thing, the Sun Eater. Again, it's been a while since I've watched All-Star Superman, and unfortunately I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
But I so what it might be in actuality is might be that Sun Eater. And yeah, sure, okay, it rises above Metropolis
Right.
and like it's not like doing anything. So they're like, okay, let's evacuate. But then the Sun Eater starts doing its thing and it starts like fucking shooting laser beams or something. Because we saw like a laser beam being shot out, or whatever the
Right.
actual threat is. Maybe it's not a Sun Eater, maybe it's just like just this generic laser ball alien thing that Lex Luthor created, and it's just yeah, and it's like shooting the city and like damaging shit and like killing people and all that. And Superman's just putting his boots on. Just kidding. But yeah, that might be what it is. Like it might be this like whatever this is, whether it's a Sun Eater or not, that could be what it is. And I think that's
Yeah.
a good theory.
That is. I think that's could be what it is. Like lighting can all be changed in post production in terms of how this is lit. It's clear as day out there with the sun outside, but you can always turn that into something like this. I mean, the buildings are lit up, and you can clearly tell it's nighttime behind Superman, but it could also be a battle that kind of goes into the night. The other thing, I mean, Geek Ledger just pointed out this question here, or he's just making an observation rather. And we sort of talked about this a little bit in terms of maybe like the how of what they have done here. They were meant to. I mean, and for all we know, they have a split crew and they are filming in the Hall of Justice, like at
Yeah,
Union
they could
Terminal,
be. I
but
was
it's all
actually going to say that.
interiors.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
possible, but we've not seen any photos come out of there, and it would be. I think they would probably go there more for the exteriors than the interiors, because in locations like this, the exteriors are really what you're there for. The interior stuff you would probably get done on a soundstage where you can kind of set up, you can build up a set, and then you can have full control over it for as long as you want any time of day, not something you have to get permits for. Whereas
Mhm.
Geek Ledger here, you make a good point. How did they get city approval for these, shots, the drone shots, like also like just being able to film there? Um, by the way, that if you're talking about the drone footage from social media, chances are that's not permitted footage. That just probably should just somebody probably threw a drone up in the air and did that. But as far as filming, either this was always planned and they just changed what they were going to film and they expanded the scope of it, and that's why they had a rush call for more extras and bringing in more cars. Or, I mean, we talked about there's like a $44 million, I believe, tax credit that the state of Ohio has made available for film and television work in the state. And of that, Superman is taking advantage of 11 million. That's a quarter of that tax credit going to this movie. This movie, Superman, is gonna that same article that we looked at from one of the local outlets. I think it was NBC4, one of the other ones, from Ohio. I forget if it was Columbus or Cleveland or Cincinnati. They mentioned in the article that if you do the math, roughly 25% of Superman is being shot in the state of
Mhm.
Ohio. Um, so, I can imagine that when you have that much clout, that it's easier to get permissions and permits, and even on last minute, kind of situations where clearly they must have looked at this and made these changes late last week, and that's how we end up in a uh, situation like today where they've got a big shoot, even if it was just modifying your permit and they were always going to be filming on the bridge. Now it's just a different kind of shoot.
Yeah.
But another question that I had for you, John. We have James Gunn clearly there. He's talking to a stunt driver. You can see the cars got, packed up with stuff. It looks like it's some kind of evacuation sequence. usually for sequences like this where you don't have any of the main cast out there, you could have a situation where the director is just not on set. It could be a second unit director doing all this work, especially if there's a lot of stunt sequences, which it seems like that's what today was about. Why do you think James Gunn is out there doing this? Do you think this, like, does that give you any indication as to how, important this might be to the
Yeah, that's what
story of the film?
that's what I'm thinking. Like it's a major story edition, and it's like a huge third act thing because like
Yeah,
evacuation, it's usually like a big third act sort of
yeah,
sequence. So because that's sign of like, oh, this is the end. This is the big villain that we're doing. So yeah, it's definitely it's giving off that vibe. It's giving off that vibe, and especially if James
yeah.
Gunn is there, because usually if like you're dealing with this many extras, it's like second unit. It's one of those guys, or like a first. I think who else would do like second unit would be like first
Well,
AD
the
or
stunt
something
team
like
would
that.
do it. Maybe the
Yeah, stunt team. Yeah, stunt
sometimes it's the
coordinator.
stunt choreographer or the who directs all the action will end up also being the second unit director. Um, but in this sequence, of course, we see clearly James Gunn is out there. He spent most of the day out, in the sun in like 90-degree heat wave like weather, all across the northeast and central United States today. Here we have a shot where we got cars. It looks like they're all moving forward, because I think if you read this article on cleveland.com, they describe that they would have these cars driving forward. They would have a sequence with like the stunt driver driving the bike through the cars. Think about like the second Matrix movie, right? Like where this had that whole highway sequence. Usually it's done at a slower speed, so for safety
Mhm.
purposes. And then once they do a take, they'll be like, all right, reset, and everybody reverses back to their starting position, and you do it again. But something went wrong, because this stunt
Yeah.
driver on a bike, he was doing his thing, but then it looks like he ended up crashing somehow. And he takes a spill, as it says right there. It looks like his knee is hurt, and it was bad enough that they had to bring an ambulance out,
Hmm.
to basically get him out to a hospital. What,
Yeah.
what do you think is going on? And I'm sure they're taking their precautions here, but obviously, when something like this happens on the set, it definitely doesn't look like this is part of the movie. This is definitely a real injury to the stuntman, and he's clearly being like wheeled out to an ambulance, and he may not be back on set for a while to come. But
Yeah, I
do
mean,
you
he
think
looks
this
okay,
was
but
something
like whoever
significant?
knows. But I,
Yeah, he had a
yeah, I hope
helmet
he's.
on. He was probably
Yeah, I know
okay.
he looks okay, so that's good. I'm saying that's a good thing. And just hope like if it's hopefully it's nothing major. It's just like maybe he like sprained his foot or something, or hit something,
Yeah,
and they're just taking proper precautions and stuff. Because
yeah.
I'm looking at I'm kind of looking at the side. Like if it says like EMT, and it's just physician, EMT, all that stuff. So it looks like a real, very, as you were saying, a very real injury. So yeah.
I'm gonna try to pull this up. I think I got the image separately so I can kind of show this, because it's a good point that you make there, that is this part of the shoot somehow and we're just missing it. And it could be indicative, depending on what's on the side of that ambulance there. So here it is. This is the picture. Um, it really doesn't look like that's probably just whichever company operates that ambulance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, because the biggest thing about this shot is, you see how like a lot of the cars in this sequence are um, just average Joe cars. There you got like a freaking Range Rover sitting right there, which clearly sticks out. And then also when you look at the people right there next to it, not only do you see the paramedics, but everybody else, like they're not dressed in that timeless Art Deco extras look that we have been talking about over the last few weeks. You can clearly tell there's crews there. They've got their radios and other stuff like on their waist and belt, and you could see even on the side there's two guys at the bottom of this
Hmm.
image. They've got their radios, so it looks like this was a break in filming to make sure that the stuntman was okay. It looks like he's okay. He's doing well, and the accident wasn't anything super significant. Um, but it definitely looks like this. They were crashing some cars. There was some precision driving, as the term goes. Uh, in the world of movie making that was happening today. So I'm sure some of these cars weren't just the cars that the extras brought to the set. These are
Yeah.
stunt cars and that the stunt team is working with. I do wonder if one of these cars has one of our main characters, or at least meant to be in it. I don't know if they were actually there. We didn't really get any
Yeah, maybe it could be
insight
like
into
Lois
that.
Lane, and like they're like, oh
Yeah,
no,
like
we
they're
have to
just
help
rushing through
Superman, and
traffic. Yeah.
then they start heading back, because that might
Maybe
be
maybe
it. Like
this Lois Lane couldn't convince Perry White to actually get her a chopper to go across the Gotham, right? Like she just has to
maybe
drive through the
maybe the
traffic.
entire Daily Planet was leaving the city, and then like they realize that like something they're needed or something happens, and they use Mr. Terrific's Terrific Mobile, and they get them back to the city, because that would look like a major fight scene happening. So that could be it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and then Derpy mentioned that, well, he expressed his concern that this could maybe delay the movie. I'm like, John, I don't think this looks significant enough that it would delay the movie. I'm sure that it caused them to kind of lose some time, at least on the day,
Yeah.
and the shots that they wanted to get, they might have had to kind of work around some things, maybe make some concessions on, and then cut some things. The director, James Gunn, and his crew, they would have had to, like, come up with
Mhm.
plan B and C. But here's the thing: when you are on the movie set, you always have a plan A, B, C, D, and probably even an F, because no plan survives the point
From
of
A to
contact, and
Y.
things
What
things
about
will
Plan
happen.
Z?
So you have to, like, and with big movies like this, they are always shooting way more coverage, aka way more shots and angles than you actually need at the end of the day, so that you have lots to work with in post production. There are directors like Clint Eastwood known to only film only as much as they need, and that's it. But I don't think James Gunn is really known for that. So yeah, I mean, Geek Ledger responded to Derpy saying that, hey, unlikely this movie is going to get delayed. They probably do have a buffer period where I remember when we looked through those articles in the local news outlets last week, it showed that they have basically got permits to shoot there all the way till August. So I'm sure there's rain dates and, like, things like that included in there, so that if they need to go back out there to shoot more stuff or do pickups, they can do it. So yeah, could they delay moving over to Delaware, which I believe is where they're headed next at some point? It could happen, or they could still follow that schedule and then just come back for pickups later if they need to. Um, the other thing I wanted to talk about here briefly is there seems to be this particular extra who's a bit he's more than just an extra. He's like a background actor who seems to have a bit more of a role to play, and you can see based on the camera positioning that they're showing this sequence maybe from his perspective. And so when they're directing the shot, it kind of like starts from him, which it could just be he's still just, an average guy on the bridge and nobody significant to the film, because I didn't really recognize the actor necessarily. Uh, but do you think that this sequence is being sort of shot from a particular perspective of a character who just sort of is there for a little bit, or is this still just mostly going to be, Superman flying in the air above all this, fighting some kind of monster, and then they're just people running on the bridge and cars
Yeah,
trying to, like, get
I
through?
like to think that like we do get some shots of like people, like kind of like what uh, the first Avengers did. They followed like Ashley Johnson's character. Like she was supposed to be like, there was a deleted scene that had her talking with
Yeah.
Captain America,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we followed her a bit in the
Right.
third act.
Mm-hmm.
How she was like, she's like, oh, I have a kid and blah blah blah. I think that would be really cool, showing like the human side to all of this, like
Yeah.
showing the human reaction rather than just kind of treating them like
Yeah.
bodies in a way, just like pieces of meat to throw around kind of thing,
Right.
showing the impact of what these superheroes do to the common people. And I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, and like, I did when I first saw these pictures of all these people running with their luggage and stuff, I was like, was there a plane crash? What, like, but then I was like, if there was a plane involved somewhere, like Superman saving the plane trope, then why would everybody be running with their luggage in hand? You just want to save yourself at that point. Then you see the cops, and you could very much tell that this feels like an evacuation sequence of some kind. Could it happen in the first act? It could, but like you said, it's more likely something they're filming for the third act, which is also why James Gunn is out there. And while it's unfortunate that one of the stuntmen got hurt and they had to, like, pause filming for a bit, it does look like the stuntman is okay for the most part. So if you guys are joining us late, I know that it was in the thumbnail and the title of the video. And yes, one of the stuntmen, it did look like, he was doing some work driving through cars for the shoot. He might have hit a car, he might have bumped into something, and he hurt his leg. But it looks like he's okay because
Yeah.
they did get him into the ambulance, and he didn't look particularly concerned, even in the picture where he's being taken into the ambulance. So yeah, it
Well,
looks
it
like
says right there they're
yeah,
filming a crash scene, but I don't know if that's
yeah.
right below that photo is. Uh,
They are, because you could see like here again, it looks like they're doing something similar where you've got cars running into each other, maybe a bike. It could be just in the background, right? Like you see cars ramming into each other. One bike slams into a car, rolls. Except, like when you're doing stunts, you can still get hit for real. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
for
yeah,
one of
yeah.
my
I just
projects,
don't want
we
to like
we
assume like, oh, this poor guy, and then it's like, oh no,
yeah,
it's all fake dipshit. Like, how
it's
the
all
fuck
fake.
can you not
No,
see
no,
that?
no. It
No,
definitely. I
I
mean,
just like
look,
that's what I don't want to do. But the thing
yeah,
is, I want to take the precaution of like, okay, I'd rather deal with that than like, oh,
yeah,
it's like, oh, clearly this was just being filmed. He's fine,
yeah.
and then it turns out like, oh no, he has to get his leg amputated. It's like, okay, let's
No, no,
not.
no. It
No,
doesn't.
it's
I
nothing
mean,
like that.
clearly, he's not impaled in between anything. It just looks like
Yeah,
he probably took a bump that he wasn't meant to take. And you can see just by the fact that there's a crew member or another extra just walking up to him, it doesn't look like this is part of the sequence, because I'd imagine when the bike did crash, there were cars going by because he's driving through all those cars. Um, but yeah, and then when you look at all these other photos as you were talking about, the scale of this is just tremendous. Like I don't know how many cars they have exactly. I'm sure somebody's gonna count them up, but to me that just looks like there's dozens and dozens of cars there. Like there might even be like 100 of them. That's a lot of cars to have out there, and certainly a lot of pedestrians as well. Uh,
hmm
do you think this is connected to that sequence where Mr. Terrific and Superman show up, and they're looking up at something, and there's a whole crash sequence? Do you think this is all part of
maybe.
that one big sequence that they're
It would
filming?
make sense that that a crash sequence happens and they've already got the city evacuated.
Yeah,
That would make
like
sense.
because I was thinking that might be part of the first act of the movie. Like this is not a third act, but this you're
Uh,
implying that this could be the third act
yeah,
of the film. Like how you reconcile those two things. I don't know, but this is also something that I was very interested in going through. Like they've got this big, in movie terms, flag, so that which is to control light. So you want to create an area of where there's shadow and darkness, and they've got this kind of hanging in the air above like a car and a bus. I wonder if that's more for just reference, lighting reference, or if they're actually shooting something inside that car, or they just
yeah.
want to. I'm trying to figure out what this is. What do you think is going on here? Is this meant to be one of those things where I remember when it was last week, I believe, or maybe the week before, where they had the truck full of pressurized cylinders set up, where Superman saves a girl, and they had like this big, piece of metal, like this metal plate, drop onto it, smashes it. I'm like,
Yeah.
this doesn't look like it's that because it doesn't look like it's a big sheet of metal, but
hmm
it definitely is creating an area of shadow and otherwise a bridge that is very much lit by the sun. So what do you
Right.
think is going on here? Is there any story relevance to this, or is this just more maybe they're just creating an area where people can just go and stand and not have to be baking out in the sun?
That could also be it. I think yeah, I mean it could be like something flying overhead. It could be like they need artificial lighting. Like maybe there's like a specific like shot that like they need and they need it to be like the and James Gunn can't do that like with natural light for whatever reason. And then there's also the what is it? The yeah, like artificial lighting that they need, and so they need to do this. They could be doing like dropping something, but this doesn't look like dropping something. This looks more like, like just providing darkness, and then it could be the shade thing because there is a guy under there.
Yeah.
Um, this could be like, it could be like a storytelling purpose. Could be a lot of things, but yeah, the shade thing could
It's
also be
also,
work.
sorry to cut
Maybe.
you off, but also they're saying in the caption here, equipment is being moved off the set. So could this be a situation where they're just moving a big flag or something that was maybe a banner in the background, or maybe
Mhm.
like a green screen or blue screen or something like that that they're just moving out, and we just kind of catch it in the middle of that move here with the picture. It could just be something as simple as that, because if you're playing the game of which of these things don't belong, it's definitely the thing that's hanging in the air. Like everything else feels like it's part of the set. Um, Now let's just kind of finish going through these photos. The rest of this just kind of looks similar. Like they're probably shooting with a lot of different cameras. You can see there's bikes kind of trying to wrangle their way through the cars. You've got people running on both sides of the bridge. This kind of gives us a little more of an insight into like what that stunt driver might have gotten himself into trouble doing, which is trying to weave through all these different cars. And of course, each car has a stunt driver inside of it. They're
Mhm.
professionals, but that doesn't mean they can't make a mistake. They can't make a mistake. I did want to though point out the comment that the watcher made. That is, do you think this is possibly reference that big flag in the air for Mr. Terrific ship? Do you think
Yeah, that
that's
could be
a
it. Yeah.
possibility?
It might not just be the villain thing. It might be like a Mr. Terrific, like a ally thing
Yeah.
rather than a villain thing.
Although, like, I'm like, then you would want it to move in a particular way, no? Like, or
Maybe
would you
or maybe it's
just
just standing there menacingly. No,
it's
it's
just
just
hovering?
standing. It's
Maybe he's
just
just hovering
there.
there.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
hovering there for whatever need be.
Yeah. Well, as far as what else is going on in the scene, this is the car that kind of takes a few bumps where you could see that it bumps into other cars in previous shots. And there's definitely some direction work being done here, some specific instructions being given. So and James Gunn was seen doing the same. So that to me implies that they have a very specific sequence and action beats that they want to capture here. And they've also got drone cameras up in the air, so they're definitely getting as many aerial angles of it as possible. Um, all around, do you think this is a single day situation? I mean, there we go, another shot of the motorcycle, the stunt motorcyclist who got hurt. But do you think this is a sequence that they'll be done filming today, or do you think they'll need to come back for more, especially considering that the stuntman got
Yeah,
hurt,
they might come
probably
back to
within
it
a
at a
couple of
later
hours out of the
date.
schedule? Yeah,
But I yeah, I don't think yeah, they could be coming back to a later date, but it feels like it's a 1 day situation because it's a bridge. It's a lot more
yeah,
complicated. It's they got to shut that major thing off, and then you have a whole bunch. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that might be this might just be a single day.
I have one more. I just want to speculate a little for a second, right? This is a shot of a stunt driver with a helmet on and in
Hmm.
all black clothes. We have seen Lex Luthor with like the uh, marks, scratch, like, cuts on his head. Do you think
Hmm.
there's any chance this is Lex Luthor driving across the bridge or some other character rather than just an extra in the background that you'll see crash the
Maybe,
cars?
maybe that
Like,
could be the case.
could this, yeah, because that would be interesting to me, like how then, because we haven't really seen much of, why was Nicholas Holt even out there? Maybe whatever they shot was shot indoor somewhere, because even though we saw him walking about, we really didn't see him doing anything on set all this time. So maybe that's in reference to that somehow. I'd be interested in finding that out for sure. But we did get some footage, by the way. This, we haven't really seen this on the show here, but it looks like this is from the day when Will Reeve was on set, and this is his cameo when he's filming, of course, behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Look at it. He's definitely playing a reporter, which he is in real life, and you can see all the extras, like whatever is happening is unfolding in real time behind him. And I can imagine they'll kind of show his footage on a TV screen somewhere in the movie, and one of our characters might be watching it. That to me is exciting. More of these live action looks at this. This is again another video look that we had up earlier of all the cars, and you can see some of those big flags on the side there, right? Did you notice that? Maybe that's one of those things that was hanging up that
Yeah, maybe.
creating the shadow, like you see right there. They're just probably, because you can see the cars are reversing, so they're just gotta hold it up, and they're there on the side there.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe that's a reference or a stand-in for something else that's gonna get
That could
replaced
be. Yeah,
digitally in post. Like it could be that.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the watcher mentions Lex might have gotten hit by some debris. Could be. And and the watcher's like, any footage you guys show he appreciates because he doesn't have Twitter or X,
Neither have
which is
I.
great.
Neither do I.
Hey,
So
happy to assist. This is also something cool that I saw. Is this from James Gunn's feed really? That's interesting. So he posted on a story that there's somebody's flying a Superman flag nearby, which is great. I'm sure people have become even bigger fans of Superman than they already were, considering that Superman the movie has taken over all of Cleveland and certainly probably other parts of Ohio as well to come. Um, but yeah, the big story of the day was the stuntman took a spill, but
yeah.
then also James Gunn was on set and they were doing this huge sequence. or it looks like they're evacuating a lot of people from one side of the bridge to the other. And there were some stunt sequences involved with cars and bikes, and maybe even one of the stuntmen might have been meant, could be meant to be one of the actors from the movie, whether it's Lex Luthor, whether it's one of the other characters, maybe somebody from the Daily Planet, maybe it's a character we don't even really know and want to consider. We know that today is David Corenswet's birthday, so David Corenswet
Yes.
himself, was not out there, but we do want to wish Superman, of course, a happy birthday, John.
Hmm.
He's the heart and soul of this movie. I fully believe this is still very much his movie. So, and he's only a ripe 31 years of age. So,
Hmm.
we want to wish Derek Cornsweet happy birthday. And of course, he's been cast for this role because they want him to be around for a long time playing the character of Superman. And if you look at shots like these from the shoot in recent weeks, this is very iconic. Like you can literally, even without looking at it from the front, be like, that's Superman. And that's going to be
Yeah.
Superman for a long time to come, hopefully. Uh, what was your favorite image from the day? Was it
Well, now
seeing
that you
James Gunn
put
out
that
there?
image up, that has to be my favorite, even though
Well,
that's
but
not technically from the
I
day.
know, but it's technically not from today's shoot. That it is an iconic image. I'll give you that, and that was my favorite image from that day. But from today's shoot, what was your favorite pick?
I don't know. There was nothing really all that memorable, unfortunately. Um, I mean, I kind of like this image because the guy in purple is like, okay, when are we gonna get out of this fucking 90-degree heat? I just want to fucking go home, get a drink of water. This was a bad
uh,
idea.
yep. He's
I
not
love
getting
how
paid
like you
very
have like the
much.
guy who looks like he's like, like the typical like homeless guy who like has like a cart of like stuff because they don't have homes, so that's what they need for
It
all this
doesn't
stuff.
have to be. I mean, he's got like luggage
No, I
on
know
there,
it
so he
doesn't
could
have
have
to be. It's
just.
just I just think it's
I'm
funny because
just.
it looks like he's wearing like a nice suit, and then he like has
Yeah,
the stereotypical homeless guy
yeah,
fit of like the cart with all the shit in it. So not saying he is, I just think that's amusing. That's all.
yeah. That's fair. Well, I mean, hey guys, like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. We've got a couple of things left to do here, so I want to start out by not the mentioning there was a fun comment exchange, which it started out as fun, but got a little intense. I did want to point out this fan comment. Simon Says So had a comment where he is not a fan of the new suit. He was like, need to get rid of the red diaper, the trunks, which we've highlighted the bulge many a times. He also then mentioned need to make the cape a few inches shorter. I particularly don't care for a shorter cape, but I mean Simon does. Need to make the blue lighter and then more Kryptonian nylon spandex material and less biker jacket armor, and then lose the collar. What do you think about his critique of the Superman suit?
Um, I mean, the cape maybe it's just like so it's not like dragging on the floor is all, but like I
Yeah,
don't know, it just also looks really good if it's also like that long as well. So I'm like kind of like if it were maybe at his ankles, like maybe like that instead of like being like pretty much touching the floor. I never liked the collar, but I mean, if you go lighter, then it just kind of looks like Christopher Reeves's suit, which is like a sky blue. I think that's a good color. I like the trunks. I and then if you do like a more Kryptonian vibe, then you're just ripping off Man of Steel. So like, yeah,
yeah,
it just that seems kind of silly to me, is all.
yeah. No, I agree with you. And then just going back to the comment again, I think the exchange was pretty fun. I mean, hey, I responded to Simon saying, "Hey, love your critique. Not sure if everyone will agree, but hey, let's see how it looks on camera, right? Because we don't really know what the final version of this is going to look like on camera. The only official version we have of the suit is the one where Superman's kind of getting changed up into. Either he's putting it on for the first time or he's getting changed into it. It's an image where you can clearly see some damage to the suit. We have seen that on set as well. But as far as the comment itself, it got a little interesting after because Light on 3 was like, I agree with some of what this person is saying. And there are lots out there too who agree with the nappy. I'm guessing that's a reference to the trunks again. The costumes look cheap, Guardians ripoffs. I don't know if that's the case really. I do
It
see
isn't.
some of the design language being similar to the Guardians suits.
It's almost like they
Maybe
have the
that's
same director or something. It's crazy.
yeah, it is that's such a coincidence. Yeah, the biker gang and oh look the sweet cute little squirrel that's new. From a okay, the last bit of that comment we don't need to read, but yeah, you're right. There are some elements of the suits in this movie that have overlap with Guardians because of course James Gunn you know, like he's got a particular style. It's kind of like even with when Zack Snyder was making these movies, like there were style overlaps with his other projects that were not DC or maybe were DC but
Although
not
would
from the
have been
DCEU.
interesting to see an Henry Cavill Superman suit where he's just wearing a thong and a cape and boots. Something like something out of 300. That would have been interesting.
Wow, now okay, you really got my imagination going with that. Not that I have any interest in getting to see that, but that would have been very
Hmm.
interesting nonetheless. The Watcher says he loves the suit, trunks included. The thing is that people have to remember DC is very much set in a fictional sci-fi sort of a world, which yes, and compared to Marvel, where everything takes place in New York or LA or like in real cities, DC is not quite that. So you know, it's more fantastical, and the trunks kind of make sense, which I think that's a good take. That's fair. Um, Hunter Iggy's basically latching onto your theories with the Song Man. Um, yeah, I don't know if I would want to see that. That's not really my vibe. By the way, they are going to continue filming Ohio, all across Ohio. It looks like both Cleveland and maybe even in Cincinnati. And then they're going to go to Delaware after that. And
Hmm.
people out there are hyped. They love the
Super
idea.
hyped.
They love the idea of even potentially having a red carpet premiere in Ohio. I don't know if that's going to happen, right? I mean, maybe they'll do a red carpet premiere, but obviously they're going to premiere this movie in LA and New York, and then I'm sure other big cities um, all across the world, like Deadpool and Wolverine currently are doing a
Yeah.
whole world tour. They're in Germany, they're in Korea, they're in China. I'm sure they're going to work their way across Europe
China.
before heading home to the U.S. Um, and then Mark Andre Roy, he mentioned that he definitely likes the idea of the trunks, that he wants to keep the trunks around, which I agree. I mean, and this is I've kind of become a convert on this because I think this particular suit, it's like if you don't have the trunks, it feels unbalanced. I think the way the suit for Henry Cavill was designed without the trunks in mind, so overall everything fit. If you were to you can't just simply take the trunks out and leave everything else the same. You would have to do a redesign of the suit. They also had a darker color suit there from Man of Steel, so I think it hid the bulge better, and it had so it just. Whereas here it would just I don't know, like I don't know if that would work so well. I that's like the Tyler Hoechlin suit from what season 1 or 2 of Superman and Lois, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that. So
Yeah, the
I don't know.
season 3 suit was definitely the best. It looked the best, but again, they're kind of dealing with a
Yeah.
shit budget, so can't really
Budget.
do much.
Can't blame him for that. But yeah, hey, there's one more comment we're gonna get through. You guys have been terrific as always, in the live chat. But we picked out this comment from a recent episode. Actually, it's not such a recent episode. We were talking about Batman Cape Crusader and possibly why we were worried. This is before the actual trailer came out. We were just looking at some images. And John, I think you were having a bad shirt day. So Kazurat made a comment like, "Hey, I have to have a good fitting shirt, of course." But I have I hate having a blown out collar too. Don't sweat it. You guys are awesome. I
Yeah,
think if I remember correctly, you had like a
I
shirt
was
where the
I
collar,
think it's that shirt on my chair actually, like
yeah,
that blue one, where
it
it's kind
was
of an older shirt, and the thing is I had been wearing it for a couple days, so like one, it was older, so like it was already stretched like that, and then two, like I had been wearing it a while, so it stretched even more, and it just looked like shit. It just did not look good at all. So yeah, you could kind of see my hairy chest. I try to avoid that now. Nobody wants to really witness that. Nobody really wants to see that. So,
I mean, hey,
you know.
to each their own. You never know. There might be people out there who are into that stuff. So I will not speak on behalf of anybody else. I, for one, was like, dude, like your shirt just looks like the collar is hanging off. So I know we talked about it for a bit, and because you were like leaving a pretty nice comment, though, saying you guys are awesome. We always love those comments. We like to tap ourselves on the back every once in a while.
Yeah.
It keeps us motivated.
Nothing
So we
wrong
love
with
to
a little
hear
bit of
the
ego. Just
feedback.
don't have a lot of bit
Yeah,
of ego.
just a little bit, just a little bit. That's it's healthy to feel good about what you're doing. We love it, doing all of this coverage of the movie and anything else that's going on in the world of DC. So we'll be back doing that again tomorrow and the day after, and as more news breaks, as they continue to film out in Ohio, or if they move on to Delaware. You can see again, by the way, in this wide shot, that big white mat that was hanging over the bridge. You can see here it's really sitting in the empty parking lot.
Also,
So
well,
I don't.
Are those or are they like jumping pads or like the
It's
pads?
either
But
that or you know what it could be? Those could be lighting pads. Like, like
yeah.
really soft lighting and just really big like pads that just they would be creating some sort of I mean I don't know why they would need that in the middle of the day, but it could be that. It's more likely that they're flags of some kind, but it could be
Hmm.
that they're, lighting rigs. So yeah, and then Watcher again insisting that watch James Gunn give us Batman with the trunks. That would be interesting. I don't know if we're gonna get to see that. That's also probably Andy Muschietti call in some ways, but yeah, it's I think it's a little easier to pull off trunks on Superman than it is on Batman. But hey, these are the pictures from today. They were filming out on the Detroit Superior Bridge. One of the stuntmen did get injured, but it looks like he's gonna be okay. James Gunn was out there. He's got a bottle of water in hand, and definitely it was a hot day. These days are long, 10, 12-hour days on set. So all the extras, kudos to them for doing a lot of the legwork in what's going to ultimately end up being hopefully a fantastic movie. And it's to everybody involved, both in front and behind the camera, for putting in the hard work and bringing what is hopefully going to be a fantastic Superman movie and a great start to the new
Most
DCU.
definitely.
And as always, we love that you guys are joining us on the show. And as always, we would love to ask for you to join us by hitting the subscribe button so you're here and you know when we're going live. Then we have a new episode of the show going up. When we have a new video going up on the channel. Earlier, we were talking about all the different movies that came out over the 4th of July weekend. And we did a bunch of movie reviews on the Also Curious show. And here we just talked about all the pictures from the shoot out in Cleveland in the new Superman movie. So hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when we go live with new shows. We'll be back tomorrow again, John. You'll be not in your normal digs, but we will cover, whatever is going on out in the world of Superman. We'll get into it. We'll dive into it. We'll theorize. We'd love to, look into what you guys have to offer with your theories, comments, questions. But until next time, go out there, watch something DC related. You can dive into cleveland.com and see if you can get a hold of these pictures. Maybe there's more out there floating around. If you find anything else that we haven't covered today, we will cover that on tomorrow's show. Until then, John, we'll see you next time on DCU Daily.